In this video, we'll test Hogue blades to find out how they heat treat their Magnica.
This knife had minor issues when it first came out in 2024. And it was expensive, setting me back more than $300. Probably because it has titanium handles and MagnaCut blade advertised at 62 to 64 HRC. I would consider this knife was a flop when it first came out. I'll tell you why in a minute. Fast forward to 2025 and lo and behold, there are two new versions of this knife. It's actually the same version with two different color scales. These handles are made out of Ridgelight, which is like a paper micarta from what I hear. I have no idea what that means. And its MagnaCut blade is also advertised to be at 62 to 64 HRC. So let's do a super quick overview of the knife and then the hardness test. I think they named the models after the four elements, and this one is called water because it has dark blue Ridgelight handles. Big weight difference, it feels light without feeling too light, if you know what I mean. The blade finish is stone washed lightly instead of being polished and tumbled like the original Misto. And except for the light blue thumb studs, the rest of the hardware looks identical. How is the action, you ask? It runs on bronze washers, but they made the action so smooth I actually had to double check that because it totally feels like it's running on the bearings. No blade play, no screeching sounds like the original Misto out the box. The detent is strong enough I have to violently shake it to shake the blade loose. Basically, they had a year to dial it in and they didn't waste it. It feels fully tuned. Let me check out the second one of this series that I got. And this one is called Fire because it has red Ridgelight, although it looks more like deep purple. The blade is black washed PVD coating, and it actually looks like stone washed jeans from the 1980s. Very smooth, very snappy action. Why am I checking the detent in a closed position? You see, when the knife first came out, Neve discovered that the blade wouldn't stay locked, and with the slightest movement of the wrist, it would just simply fall out of closed position. My titanium handled Misto did not have that issue. It had a couple others. This knife clearly has a detent on par with any other axis lock or crossbar lock knife. Included in the package are these patches corresponding to each knife, representing water and fire elements. Let me compare it to the knives it clearly intended to compete with.
Size-wise, these fit right between Benchmade tagged out and Mini tagged out. Those are a little sliced though due to the high grind and basic Skinner Hunter configuration. With the blade closed, Misto fits smack in between the tagged outs.
Let's continue with the Benchmade theme for a minute. Here is the Bugout full-size one. And as you can see, the handle is just a little shorter. And how about blade to handle ratio? I would say Misto and the Bugout have near perfect blade to handle ratio. And that's what makes the Bugout one of the best-selling knives ever, that it looks like a knife, looks like a fixed blade because the blade doesn't look grotesquely too short. And speaking of bestsellers, here's the full-size 940 Osborne, also Benchmade. And as you can see, not only the lengths are near identical, the shapes are near identical as well for the handle. Somebody will call it a Bugout or Osborne killer. Speaking of Bugout killers, here's Kershaw Bel Air. That's the latest edition with canvas micarta handles. It's sized like a Bugout, so same considerations here. A little shorter handle, a little shorter blade. This next knife is well loved by all its users and well hated by the industry. Why? Because being the first ever production US-made MagnaCut bladed knife, it was priced below $150, which was unheard of at the time. And, the rest of the industry had to follow the suit.
But once again, with the handle being the same length as the Mistos, the blade is a little bit shorter. The handle length on Spyderco Para 3 is about the same again, but the blade is significantly shorter. We're talking about 3/4 of an inch. And here's the Paramilitary 2. Love this knife, and the handle is much longer, but the blade is basically the same length as the Misto, which will have actually a lot more cutting edge due to the lack of the large finger choil. And of course I'm going to show RAT 1.5 because this is the most affordable MagnaCut folder currently in the market. It's around $80, but it's made in Taiwan. The real magic of the newly released Mysto Fire and Water is the weight. The original titanium version weighs right around 100 grams, but the Ridgelight version weighs under 72 grams or 2.5 ounces, as opposed to 3.6 ounces for the titanium one. And now let's take a look under the microscope at the edge. I'll come back to the tip. Look at the very nice secondary bevel grind. It looks like they used progressive belts. There's a very slight convexity, so belts were used but progressively, not just like 180 and then stropping belt. Now look at the edge. They completely removed the burr. I observed no burr. Ignore the little piece of dirt there. And same on the other blade. Absolutely deburred, nicely formed. You have to see it compared to the Bugout though. You don't have to be a pro sharpener to tell the difference. I'm not talking about the rough media here. Look how they deburred. They ripped that burr off. Here's the comparison again. This is Misto compared to Bugout. Which of these two edges you think will not have to be resharpened straight out of the box? And here's absolute perfection at the tips. And how does it look near the sharpening choil? I have to say, they did a little better job on the Stonewash blade than on the tumbled one. You know what? It's a small price to pay for the rest of the perfection here. As usual, I start all my hardness tests with verifying the calibration of my Rockwell tester. I use an NIST independently certified calibration block that is rated, as you just saw from paperwork, to be at 62 HRC. This segment is accelerated 2x because each of these tests takes a little over 30 seconds. Now I'm waiting for the major load to drop, and the result is 62, spot on as calibrated. I decided to surprise you folks. I'm including my Hogue Deca blades into this test, so we're gonna get 5 blades tested today. This one I purchased very early on. As soon as Hogue came out with MagnaCut knives, this blade was purchased, tested, and this is an original Tanto shape blade. Let's see the first poke result. 63.1 HRC, smack in the middle of the advertised range. So this blade, I don't know if you notice, has a reshaped tip. I'll explain why after we check the result, which is coming up at 62.9 HRC. I used to do what I called Tree of Doom stabbing tests, where I stab the blade into the Tree of Doom 25 times to see if it will break the tip off. And this one fell victim to the test. And so I knew that the hardness on this blade will be pretty high. This time I got 63.2 HRC. At that time I was learning a lot about the blade geometry, and that's why I got this blade, which was the second release of the Deca, and this one came with a clip point. And the clip point Deca has a swedge, and the swedge produces 2 ridges near the tip of the blade, and these ridges absorb a lot of stress. And so the first indentation yields 63.8 HRC, which is pretty darn high. And so even the thinnest of blades, when properly designed as far as the geometry goes, can withstand pretty high stresses. All right, let's see here. We got 63 HRC, spot on. So I got a lot of flack initially for breaking the tip on one and people yelling at me how I'm using knife inappropriately. But this is the nature of tests. We push things to the limit to find out what these limits are. Obviously, stabbing trees is by far not the most scientific method, but combined with the test you are watching right now, 63.5 HRC, proves without any reasonable doubt that MagnaCut, pushed even to the highest limits of hardness, remains a pretty tough steel, and that geometry will often determine the ultimate performance of the blade. So this fourth poke was for verification and it came in at 63.9. Next, I'm going to test the blade from the titanium handled Misto, the one I bought a year ago, and tested for hardness back then using leap tester, which is what you see on the right now. I no longer use this tester, but I want you to know that it gave me errors about 10 to 15% of the time. What? 66.1 HRC. That doesn't seem right. I need to do one over. Most likely I hit one of the divots left by the leap test, which, as you just saw, gave me 63.8 HRC. Let's see what we get on this poke. This is puzzling. It is still above the advertised range. You know what? After I test the remaining blades, I will recalibrate the Rockwell tester just to make sure it didn't go out of whack while I was testing. Fingers crossed. 66.7. Wow. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to poke it where I haven't touched it with a leap tester, namely behind this wedge on the main blade, and see if I get a lower result. Can you believe I'm looking for a lower result? Anyway, I am still in shock, so let me poke it again and see what happens here. All right, I got 64.2, which is in the same ballpark as previously tested on the leap. I am experiencing dual emotions here. Meanwhile, I'm putting the next blade, Mysto Water, on the anvil. Do you know the definition of dual emotions? I'm thinking about telling you in a minute. Meanwhile, I'd appreciate a like for all the effort that I'm putting into this video. Let's see here. What? 65 HRC? Quick, somebody pinch me. Am I dreaming? So here comes the definition of dual emotions. It's watching your mother-in-law drive off the cliff in your brand new Jeep Rubicon. That's 80s humor. 64.6. I definitely need to recheck the calibration after the test. Super puzzling here. If Hogue were actually listening to the community and shooting for 65 HRC hardness, why didn't they advertise it? We got 64.3 this time. I have a theory, and we don't even have to wait too long to prove or disprove it, because the very next blade I'll be testing is Mysto Fire, which came in Stonewash Black. I think it's PVD Stonewash finish. And applying PVD finish to a blade is an additional thermal process at around 250 Fahrenheit. Holding my breath here for the result. 64.2. Anyway, the blade is coated and then exposed to 250 to 300 Fahrenheit for about half an hour to an hour, which can further temper MagnaCut or lower its hardness because it's not a tool steel. We got 64.1 this time. And so it behooves a manufacturer to heat treat all the blades a little higher, knowing that some of them will be then PVD coated and lose some of this hardness. Kind of tricky situation for the heat treater. 63.0. So for this blade I got an average of 63.7. Question is, can I trust it? Let's put the calibration block back on the anvil and check. Do you guys think I'm splitting hairs here? Maybe I'm overthinking all this.
I would like to hear from you in the comments. Oh, and could you please share the link to this video on the forums? I'd like to hear from as many people as possible. Got 62.0, so my calibration is still good, which means these three blades are between 63 and 65. And the Deca blades are between 63 and 64. I don't have a way to prove or disprove my theory any further, so let's treat it as a speculation. And the entire test is not done to the industry standards, even though I'm using an industry standard measuring device. I would appreciate if you just drew your own conclusions and shared those conclusions with the rest of the community.